sits on the bench right now for this franchise and a major piece. Oh, a major body cut by Brandon Ingram.
I can't wait, though, for tomorrow night's game. But first, let's celebrate last night's game, as I'm not entirely sure the Pelicans aren't the best team in the NBA right now. And what I loved so much about it, and remember we said going into that game, yes, you were 1-3 against the Spurs this year, but you'd never face them with your good lineup, and you saw what you can do with your best lineup. And what I love about it is the superstars set the tone early, right? I mean, we all know what McCollum did, 27 in the first half, just straight up did not miss. It felt like the entire night. But the play that sticks out with me, even though, again, Papa CJ is the Gandalf in this equation. Like, he comes in and makes magic happen and saves the day in a lot of ways. But you need your Aragorn to go from being the reticent, I don't know, I'm Strider, I don't know if I want to be king. You need that guy to be king. That was Brandon Ingram last night. He set the tone. That dunk he had in the first quarter, 2 hands down the lane, his aggressiveness towards the basket, he immediately from the beginning of the game let you know, I'm not playing soft. I'm not playing passive. We finally got a packed out house in here. It's a postseason game. I'm going to the rim. And then you have CJ to hit the shots. And then when BI gets in foul trouble, you have Jose Alvarado come in and go 3 of 3 from 3, play excellent defense. You have Herbert Jones. Herb Jones making plays throughout the entire night. It just felt so pure and so good. And I've not felt that way about basketball, Pelicans basketball specifically, in such a long time. Like last night, every time CJ put up a big shot and it was going in and the net wasn't even moving, I had to almost pinch myself. Like, I don't know how many threes, big threes that were needed. I watched Eric Gordon throw up back in the day only to miss. It felt like every important three was always missed back then. No longer the case in this new age Pelicans. It was just what a fantastic game in which all of your strongest pieces showed up in very strong ways.
Yeah, and you had to have all the things happen, right? You wanted to have the guys show up, and we talked about it yesterday, a team that's got so many young players, but you did have some veteran guys who have been in this position before, and then CJ was the guy we probably talked about the most. And like I said, he goes out there, and he's absolutely lights out. I mean, his first half is like you can't say enough about it. I mean, what he did in the first half, he felt like he truly couldn't miss. Right, then he stays in the game and he affects the game even in the second half, maybe if he's not scoring. So all your veteran players did exactly what they had to do, and then you had the young players that we've talked about throughout the season. I mean, Herb's defense was fantastic, but he makes a couple of shots last night. So everything worked out exactly how you wanted it to play out. When you look at like the plus minus, like all of your people that you wanted to play well played well. So this team has very intriguing pieces because you kind of are starting to see exactly where everybody fits, and they've got something for almost every situation.
They look big.
They really do.
Night. They look really big on that court. Like, they outsized the Spurs significantly.
And the way they play defense, too, like you can say, okay, well, you're supposed to play defense that way because you're making money, you're professional. We know that's not the NBA. Like, the way they play defense is different than most teams. You're just not going to get that type of effort on both ends. But you have a couple of players there for the Pelicans that they thrive in that situation.
I think it comes, I think I would attribute that, and Mario, you can jump in here if you want, but I think I would attribute that to a couple of sources. First off, I think it starts with Willie Green, obviously, right, as everything kind of does in this season. And then, it's why I call them the Bad News Birds. This is the island of misfit players, cast-offs, one and all, and that has a way of instilling a grit in you, Jake, that maybe some other more coddled NBA teams have not gotten. And you want to talk about validation of that grit. I mean, how do you think these players felt in that stadium last night? Like, they have played in front of some of the most empty crowds that you will see in the entirety of the NBA. What at times felt like hundreds of people. Like, it didn't even feel at times like there was even 1,000. I know there probably was, but like, it felt like there was not. And so for them to go from playing in front of empty gyms, dead in the water, to now being one win away from being just the 4th team in NBA history to make the playoffs after starting 1-12, it's unreal. And for these players, hearing those chants in the fourth quarter, defense, how loud it felt. I mean, it sounded like the Superdome in there. Hearing that just had to be so inspiring, validating, and encouraging for the future. I mean, they literally resurrect, as we celebrate the resurrection, they literally resurrected a stadium from nothing and a fan base and a city and it was so much fun. It's also validation of the playing game. Again, like I'm right there, arm in arm with Minnesota. We celebrating this thing. Last night was super, super fun, and we mentioned the defensive, the defense chance in the fourth quarter and everything. That's one other thing that I love about last night's game is as good as McCollum and Brandon Ingram were to start the game, they came through in the end. Right, the Spurs go on that 16-1 run. I think the lead was either down to 7 or 9 at the time. And finally, after 6 minutes of the field goal, Ingram hits a big jumper. On the other end of the floor, McCollum gets a big rebound off of a three. You know, one of those crazy, can lead to offensive rebounds, bounce around threes. He gets a big rebound, hooks up Valanciunas on the other end. He scores, push lead back to 10. And then Brandon Ingram comes back with another big-time jumper, pushes it to 12, and the game is functionally over at that point. So your best players showed up in the beginning to set the tone, and they showed up in the end to win the game. And that's how this all has to work. If this Pelicans team is going to go and beat the Clippers, you already know. I bet that, Pelicans getting points in LA. Let's freaking ride. But yeah, man, it was just. I keep thinking about the journey that this team has been on. Like, what do you think last night's sleep felt like? It had to feel incredible, right? All the hard work, all the hours in the gym, all the sweat, the blood, the tears, all the cliches. And you did it in front of 17K last night, in front of a rabid 18,000. A sold out Smoothie King Center. And I know it's not done, right? And obviously we have to hit the reset button, 24-hour rule, all those things as well. You got 9 p.m. tomorrow in LA. But again, you can't discount what was just a unreal night. And then how about Herb Jones? I mean, he's fantastic in every facet of the game. When Herb was hitting threes too, you knew, okay, that's a wrap. Spurs are in deep trouble. And then how about Herb Jones? Though again, should be first team or on one of the NBA All Defensive teams. Dejounte Murray, the All-Star, 5-19 last night. Thanks to Herb.
Yeah, and not just him. Johnson, who we talked about yesterday as well, was 6 of 20.
Yeah, he was nowhere to be found.
Really put some good offensive players in just a bad cycle. Like when you watch the game, force them to take bad shots. And the defense for this team, look, and I know the Spurs scored over 100 points, but still, like, the defense of this team is going to be what carries them for however long they go. I truly think it's going to be the defense. It's going to be their willingness to play defense because, again, like, those are good offensive basketball players that you really just frustrated.
Bro, you survived, what's the name, Vessel going like 7 of 13 from 3?
Yeah.
Like, that's one of those outlier type of performances that in a one-game sample, winner take all, can be really dangerous, right? Like we saw with LSU in the tournament this year.
Yeah.
Who's old boy from Iowa State that shot like 25% of the
shooting
during
from
the
the
season?
logo.
Yeah. Like that type of outlier that can sink you potentially. Yeah. And yet what I love about this team is this team, and this is where they really embody the notion of team, is that when somebody's down, somebody else steps up. So like I said, CJ and Ingram set the tone early on. Ingram then gets into foul trouble. Well, that's fine. Alvarado comes in, and he kicks ass and takes over. Very strong finish to the first half. Second half, CJ cools off a bit because, 27, the math gods came for him, right? Who stepped up? Jonas Valanciunas in the third quarter, the big man. He pushes it. What do you have in the second half, Mar? Like 12 or 15
I think he had 13 at least. He finished with 22, 9 for 14 shooting.
Yeah, and so and most of that came, I want to say, in the third quarter.
It did.
So you had him step up in the third quarter to help extend that lead. You do have the lull in the fourth. You have the big run, but then once again, it was CJ, Ingram, Valanciunas stepping up and shutting the door. And that sort of ability to morph to the situation at hand, that sort of ability to adapt and survive, and when one person falls, another come up, it's something that I've never seen. Even that Pelicans team that swept the Blazers never had this. They never had depth like this. They never had team like this. And that's a huge credit to David Griffin, man. And because this team is very well built right now.
Depth is one thing, but also, like you just said, their team might be the most important thing.
Yeah.
Because when you look at the depth, they do have it. Like, you go into a basketball game like that and you play 9, 10 players, like, you have true depth. But it's team and guys like Larry Nance. Like, Larry Nance comes over. He's new to this team. He's been in finals before, and last night he didn't score, but he had 8 rebounds.
Yeah.
Like, that's the team part that you're talking about. And he's okay with that being his role. That he only took 1 shot. Played 14 minutes, only takes 1 shot, but he grabs 8 boards. And like if you can get veterans like that to buy in and just know that they're a piece to the puzzle, that's what's going to help this Pelicans team. Like if they have any chance, it's because of performances like a Nance going in there, veteran player. I don't have to shoot. I'm gonna shoot one time in 14 minutes, but I'm gonna grab you 8 boards.
Yeah, so you spurred me to look up the board, because I knew it felt this way. I hadn't looked at Pelicans out rebounding Spurs 53-30.
Yeah, it wasn't even. You could tell during the game.
Yesterday, the big boys, they just felt bigger.
Well, you got. I mean, you have 2 5s out there.
Yeah.
I mean, in your starting lineup, you have 2 5s
that are athletic enough to switch and play
Yep.
D and follow guys to the outside if they must.
I mean, Jackson Hayes only took 1 shot.
Yeah,
Took 1 shot.
And
he played 20 minutes.
And we were kind of looking at him as maybe he was going to have a really big game considering what he had done in the lone win against the Spurs. But again, not needed because this team now has 2 legitimate superstars and then all the role players around them to feed off of those guys and set them up for success. I mean, I keep going back to that Brandon Ingram dunk. It was a level of aggression that set the tone for where their head was at mentally for the entire night. Mario, what's up, man? You're the host of the Flock Up podcast. How you feeling today? Give us your breakdown of the game.
To your point about BI, that's my biggest takeaway from the game. I'm very happy that he finally got to experience that environment. That was his first postseason game of his career in LA or New Orleans.
Right.
Like all the young guys, it's their first time, obviously, but for CJ, it's nothing new. He's been in big playoff series with Portland before. For Valanciunas, it's nothing new. He's been in big series with Toronto and Memphis before, but it's really nice to see Brandon Ingram finally get to play in that environment. And I think specifically on that dunk, maybe letting out a little bit of frustration, like letting everybody know he's finally here. And think of everything he's been through, man. Like all the Zion drama, all the coaches changing, all the stuff with David Griffin. Like his
time in LA, dude.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, just being completely cast aside and like judged when he was like 19 years old as you're going to be bad. You're never going to make it.
Yeah, and a guy never makes excuses. He just hoops, and I'm happy he's finally getting to see some success. And it's really exciting to see what comes next, not just in the game against the Clippers, but in the offseason, what happens with Zion. Like, this team has a really good future, and none of it would be possible without Brandon Ingram.
Yeah. And what I was struck by last night with Brandon Ingram, and I know that this is a bit hyperbolic, but he does have a bit of, now it's not as refined or as effective, but he does have that KD style where with his length, he can get his shot off. Like you really can't stop him from getting his shot off. It's just whether or not he ends up making it. But yeah, that's a great point about just his whole journey that he's been on. And never forget what Papa CJ said when he came here a couple months ago. Quote, "I've made the playoffs 8 straight years. This will be 9. When we make the playoffs." And that was a team that at the time was a little frisky, but like essentially still dead in the water. And yet here Papa CJ is speaking truth to power. We love him. I saw that he said, "I'm home" yesterday after the game, which you love. I also like that he left a bit of a challenge to Pelicans fans as well, saying this is the start of something special for sure. Obviously, we've got to try to take care of business in LA, but once we get back here, I look forward to seeing more sellouts. I'm sure the fans do too. We will reward them with high level of play and high level of energy and leave it all out there on the court. So right there, he is talking about what we have always talked, the transactional exchange between fan and team. If you win, they will come. That's the bottom line. And this Pelicans team is finally starting to grab this city a little bit, grab some of that heart and mind share. And we've wanted them to take for so long. And again, in so many times in the past, you build up to these type of moments and then you fell flat on your face and it had a reverse negative effect where it made people overly angry. Not the case last night. You finally had a force multiplier for good.
Yeah, look, people work hard for their money. They work hard to be able to go to games and watch the Pelicans play and go to the blender. But if you show that you're going to work hard and you're going to put a good product in the court, people are going to come to the games. It's like when you say New Orleans isn't a basketball city. No, I mean they'll come if you're worth watching.
Weekend winners, people who have tried to say that New Orleans will be a basketball city for years and years because those tweets were all over the place last night. Weekend winners, all the Pelicans beat writers, all the Pelicans podcasters, the Pelican Twitter hive, everybody who kept the faith through the dark times got just a little taste of the promised land last night, just a little victory lap, and I'll be damned if it didn't feel really good. The Clippers about to get that ass worked. If there's one chant that long-term New Orleans Pelicans fans love. It's beat L.A. You could hear it again last night. Never forget cheering it against Kobe back in the day. And, they're excited once again to bust it out against the L.A. Clippers tomorrow. One interesting note about this Pelicans-Clippers game, it is the inverse of the Spurs in terms of how the regular season went. 1-3 against the Spurs, 3-1 against the Clippers. Yet, ironically, 5.5-point favorites against the Spurs, 4-point dogs against the Clippers. It's a little bit, how do you interpret that, Mario? Why are the Pelicans opening up at 4-point dogs? Which, by the way, DraftKings right now, I just did a little, I just did Pelicans +4 and the over, and like as a little same game parlay, it pays out 4-1. And if you want to hop on some before maybe the Pelicans get bet to a smaller line. But why is that, Mario? Why have the Pelicans open as dogs despite being 3-1 on the season?
Well, the Clippers just took the L to the Timberwolves, but before that, they were playing really good. And 2 words, Paul George, he didn't play in any of the games against the Pelicans that they won. And before that game against the Timberwolves, they had won 7 out of 8 since he got back, so that would probably explain the line being what it is.
Yeah, and obviously they're playing in Los Angeles as well, and, I mean, you saw the environment last night, and so it's impossible not to give a little bit of a bump.
On the road as well.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah,
you're always
the home
going to
crowd's going to give them a little juice.
Yeah. And, I mean, last time we saw these two teams play, obviously the Clippers took care of business. So, all that's going to play a factor into it for sure.
Yeah, no Kawhi Leonard still, but that's still a team that went to the Western Conference Finals last year and has done a really good job, honestly, getting to this spot because they haven't had Kawhi all season. They haven't had Paul George for more than half of the season. So you add Paul George to what they're already doing, some people think they could be dangerous.
On Lebs the other day, they were kind of intimating that Kawhi's been putting out there that maybe the Spurs kind of ran him into the ground. Have you heard anything about this?
Yeah, that's an old story. He was at odds with Spurs medical staff.
I remember all that, but I'm saying I thought it was cropping back up recently that maybe he's putting it out there. Either way,
I guess he's just going on record saying what everybody already knew, the situation with Uncle Dennis and whatnot.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about all of that. T-Bob didn't know what a Clipper was. I did not. It looks like it's a very fast sailboat or something from the 19th century. I feel like I've come across it in sometimes. I mean, that's the question. Will Kawhi play again? It doesn't matter, though, for tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Look, we are taking suggestions for where the watch party maybe should be. If you want to get in the chat and let us know. We'll go deeper on the Clippers tomorrow, but hell yeah, very excited. And this is funny there. Even on Get Up right now, instead of talking about the game, they're talking about Zion Williamson doing a 360 dunk and warm-ups last night. I would like to applaud this show for not mentioning Zion once during the opening 30 minutes in which we only talked Pelicans, because that is the point. Zion's landing.